We're good, Sarah. Whenever Sarah's ready.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna start this is actually our regular Board of Trustees meeting with a modified agenda. So we do have a quorum. We are not going to executive session. This is being live streamed. This is being recorded. And the agenda is to have a conversation with Jess Bowen, who's a candidate for executive director. There's one additional item, which is we're going to review after we're done with about an hour of that interview. We will review the process of the search from the beginning for everybody listening to understand what the board has done since last year to get to the point where we're at, which I think would be helpful to remind everybody, the history and what happened and, what didn't happen and how things happened. So I'll do that after we're done. There's not going to be any deliberation today. We need to do a roll call, right?
No, I was going to say, and about what to do with the...
Oh yes, and how to provide feedback. That will be part of that description.
Sir, I believe because we have remote participants, I believe we do need to announce the role.
Yeah, so I can, do you want me to do that?
Either way.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm looking at everybody. So in the room we have Don Capello, Roy Jarrett, Sheila Kelly, Zach Prescott, Sammy Samini, sorry, and Raul Porras. And on the phone we have Jill Schaefer and Laura Borges. Did I miss anybody? All right. Any other procedural aspects before we start conversation with Jess? No? All right. So I don't know, Don, if you want to kick it off, or we just basically want to give Jess an opportunity to introduce.
I'll give a quick rundown of the day. Had Jess here starting at 7:30 this morning, so it's nice to see you again.
Still standing.
So yeah, it's been a long day. Jess has been able to meet with almost every stakeholder group we have, parent Zooms, student time, which was great. Obviously, Mrs. Lindsay, admin, teachers, department heads. So I think we've run the gauntlet. Gave you a couple of breaks here and there. Yep. So welcome tonight. We're all very happy to see you. We're very interested in the conversation, and we'll hear from you.
I am thrilled to be here. I have enjoyed my conversations all day. It was kind of nice. I don't often get an hour to sit down and talk to my colleagues in that way. So it's, of course, stressful and tiring, but actually it's been really great. So thank you.
And our plan tonight, we all have questions. I know Raul and I have spent a lot of time with you, so we'll certainly let our colleagues have more of the time, and we've got some members on the phone, so whoever wants to kick it off.
I'll start then. So as you know, the last couple of years with COVID has been quite a adventure or quite a challenge. So how would you, as leader of AMSA, assess and address the educational and social emotional gaps that our students have faced as a result of the COVID year?
I should have done that first. Well, I think that part of the assessment is anecdotal, where I want to talk to my teachers, and I want to hear what they're experiencing in the classrooms and what they're seeing, and let that really kind of drive our conversation. I think also we're doing comparing test scores from before, using benchmarks that we've always used. Have we seen dips in these? Where are these dips? Where can we address these? What are our priorities? Which ones are the ones that we need to target the most? Looping in department chairs and teachers on that. And I think hearing from students themselves, surveying students, and I think we've done that. And I would want to continue to do that, get their feedback. I think also tracking data like nurse visits and what the counseling staff is saying. They're going to have feedback, or are we getting a lot of kids in there who are, we've heard that from the counseling staff. We're getting a lot of kids in here and a lot more kids who are struggling. So keeping track of that and keeping our pulse on that.
So, so what about how would you, once you identify the gaps? How would you look to address them?
Yeah. So I think that working with the team that we have in place, the counseling staff, the health staff, the teachers, and the department chairs, trying to identify what is, I think there's sort of a triage here. What can we fix quickly, and what is a highest priority? So those two things might not be the same thing. So there might be some issues that people think, if, you know what, we can, there's grant for a math intervention, that might be something that we can implement fairly quickly and easily. That might not be the highest priority thing, but that is something that we can do easily. And then really sort of the ones that are more difficult but needy, where this is a big priority, where are we going to get the resources targeting that? And I think I would want to hear from the team to kind of decide as we prioritize what those needs were. And then once we sort of can figure out that priority, figuring out how to get the resources to address them. Okay, now we know that this priority is here. Do we need another counselor? Do we need, you know, what kind of resources can we get to help us bridge this, address this gap that we're clearly seeing? That's what I would see my role as the ED is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit about how you envision the transition? You've been at AMSA a long time in a teaching role. How you envision that transition to being ED? How you would work on that, and what steps you would take to kind of establish yourself in that role?
So as I understand it, the start date is, we're looking at like a July 1st start date. So hopefully I would have time between now and July to go to every possible board meeting that I can go to, any kind of open meeting, so that I have as much information as possible. Maybe wrangle some invites to other meetings, but as much as I can, sort of trying to get on board with that. Once that started, I think then in the summer, working with the administrative leadership team to hear where they are in their process, what is stressing them out, what are they trying to get done, what are their goals, what are their concerns, what are they excited about, where they are in their schedule, using that summertime to really get all on board, and so that we're really clear on what different responsibilities are. I've talked earlier today about, I think one of my priorities would be a clarity of an org chart that I think that we sometimes lack. I think that we, sometimes, and I said this, sometimes I've been here 15 years, I still don't know who to go to with certain questions, so being really clear about who's in charge of what, and that might not need to be the way it has been in the past, so that might be something that there's a part of the team, oh well, now that I'm here, maybe we want to do this differently, so maybe there's some shufflings of things and clearing up some things where there's overlap. So I think that in the early part, I would want to really kind of work with the team that's here in place to clarify roles. And I also think that I would want to be really planning for the upcoming year and focusing on that staff orientation week, how we want to launch that. I like a good theme, so we might have like a theme for a staff week, maybe some t-shirts and maybe a hashtag. What would be sort of the priority, and how can we sort of get everybody on board and excited about this thing that we'll be really kind of targeting for focusing on. I have some ideas, but I would definitely want to hear what the ideas are from the leadership team and Mike and the deans and Amanda and the department chairs. I don't want to come in and bring my awesome idea that nobody else is on board with. That seems like a terrible way to start. So that would be sort of how I would start to get on board, talking to people, listening to people, and planning our launch for the school year as to what our priorities are going to be and how we're going to get everybody excited about it.
Mr. Finkel has asked me to remind the trustees, can you speak into the microphone when you ask the question? I think it's hard for the camera to
Am I doing it? Is it okay now?
No, you're
okay.
great. It's just,
You're the only one doing it right.
It sounds so weird. Okay.
I do know that.
Okay.
I'll just be off for now.
Burning.
So I'll have a question. Somewhat parallel to Roger's earlier question. So, as we know, AMSA has a very rigorous curriculum. It's something we take a great deal of pride in. We hold the students to very high standards. This can also cause a great deal of stress in our student population. We've become increasingly aware of that over the last couple of years. So how can you see yourself providing the supports or the directives to both continue holding the students to those high standards while also helping them grow their social emotional skills and meet the needs that we know are there?
Yeah, I think this is something we've gotten much better at in the past few years, so I don't think that it's in the past few years that we've become more aware of it. I think that we've always kind of been aware that this is a challenge that we have at AMSA. I think we've done a really nice job in the past years of bringing on the right staff for this, making sure that the English language learners are getting supported, the SPED students are getting supported, the counseling staff has what they need. I think that we've done a nice job of trying to focus, like for instance, small detail changes in the program of studies to indicate how much hours of homework each class will have so that kids have a more realistic, when they're drawing out their plan, how many hours they're signing up for. Really using our system of prereqs and teacher recommendations to make healthy recommendations for students. I think kids and families can sometimes feel that personally. As a matter of fact, as a small coincidence, my sister, who's at a completely different school system, her son, my nephew, was not recommended for the level she would like him to be in, and I've got to call her tonight and work on that. So I don't think that's a universal AMSA thing, but I think it's sort of listening to our professional people's opinions. I hope she's not live streaming. And listen, I think that most teachers want kids to have that healthy balance and are encouraging kids to ask themselves really tough questions. Do you see that you are signing up for 5 APs here? Is this really what you want? I don't think this is a great choice for you. And using that process to kind of help kids get a better start of the school year and helping kids. Sometimes I feel like kids think I'm being mean, but what I really want you to do is find the best path for your success. That's what we're all about. The more we can do that on the front end, the easier that is to fix. I think it's much harder to fix when it's November and you're drowning, and you know, it's harder to manipulate schedules and things like that. So as an ED, I would want to help my team be in place to have scheduling processes that allow for time to meet with kids, allow counselors to meet with kids, allow kids to understand what they're signing up for, and try and do a lot of that on the front end as much as possible. Then when it is November and people are drowning, I obviously mean figuratively, that we're really helping individuals more than getting them what they need, and making the resources for that to happen, and making sure our counselors feel like they have the support that they need to help kids, making sure that kids know how to get help, what help is available. I am somebody who does absolutely value academic excellence and rigor, but I think that if you're at a point where that is painful, then that is no longer serving your need. And so recognizing when we say, let's figure out a way to change your schedule so that, I don't think I touched anything, but it just went off.
Did it die?
Pause.
Just decided batteries?
We'll take a pause.
Maybe the battery.
That sounded like a dying.
Would that one over there reach?
Oh, is that it better? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't have a timer on it? I don't know. All right.
Battery?
Nice recovery, Jess.
Sorry about that.
No, you're
Does anybody remember what I was saying? I think that, I don't think that rigor needs to come at the expense of compassion. And I think that we're in the business of helping people be their best, and being your best is not working yourself until you are in mental or physical pain. That being said, I think that what makes AMSA special is the difficult is what makes it good. If this was easy, we would be at a different school. We would be at a different place. If it was easy, we wouldn't be us. And if it was easy, I wouldn't have a job. If it was easy to learn economics, I wouldn't have a job. If it was easy to learn how to swim, I wouldn't be a swim teacher. No matter what it is, the hard is what makes it good. That is the value. And what I really would like us to see, both in AMSA and just as a society, because I don't think that I think that this problem is much broader than what we're facing here at AMSA, is we let people, it might be a battery thing, because maybe I got a few more.
Not a long wire.
Is that not going to work, because it will not?
That'll work.
That's okay, I can leave.
Yeah.
All right, my AV tech skills are very impressive.
Can only go so far.
Move that.
Maybe Don, if you go,
Yeah, 'cause I don't- we can try one.
Yeah.
We can trade here.
Good idea.
either that or you can sit over there.
You want me to just sit?
And you'll be in stereo.
Hello. If I sit here, I don't think you'll hear me anymore.
Closer somehow?
I don't know.
Well, Mr. Finkel's on it. I think we're getting
I'm
better.
waiting for directions. Mr. Finkel's going to help us out.
If it works, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like us to, is this hearable? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have used the analogy today of a mountain, right? We don't really want to be in the position where we're sort of shaving off the top of the mountain. What we need to be in the position of doing is, I have climbed this mountain. I've helped a whole bunch of other kids climb this mountain. I'm going to help you climb this mountain. I know what to do, and I am not going to leave you stranded. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to get you a hiking stick. I'm going to get you a path. I'm going to get you a canteen. Whatever you need to get this mountain over this mountain. That is what we're going to do. And what we need to do is find what those individual needs are for each of the people who are struggling. And the idea of victory, or right at the end of the year we have these moments where we get to celebrate all these wonderful successes. Those moments are so wonderful because that journey there has been difficult. And we want these journeys to be challenging so that we're setting kids up for success, not just at AMSA, but when they leave and go to college and they leave and get jobs and they face challenges in those arenas, that we have set them up with tools of, when I have help, I know how to ask for help. When I need help, I know how to ask for help. I know how to rely on myself. I know how to budget my time better. I know how to take a walk when I'm stressed out, or whatever the skills are that we're helping students learn to face the challenges that life throws at us. That is a far greater mission than just learning how to do the calculus. Both are equally important. And the rigor, the difficulty should not be meant to be crippling, and it should meant to test and strengthen us. And I think that's true of our students and all of us. I'm a better person because I've done hard things. And I look back and I see hard things that I've done, and I say, oh, that was hard.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's good. That's where the pride comes from.
So I have something a little bit in a different vein.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about internal things, like, the teachers and, the challenges within the school and whatnot. And I think one of the important things about the executive director, as opposed to the other roles within the school, is that you're also representing the school out to the community. And as you know, we're in the middle of a capital campaign. We're building relationships that we need to strengthen for the future, but particularly for a capital campaign or for a building, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or any plans on, as an executive director, how would you play that role externally? How do you build that network outside of the school? What kinds of things do you think we should be thinking about to build that image? Because part of it, our community, part of our values, and also our charter is dissemination. So anything that you might want to talk about related to external work and partnerships?
It's one of the things of the role that I'm looking forward to the most. Is I've always enjoyed any time where I can be an ambassador for AMSA. I live in the community. I run into community members at the grocery store and at restaurants. I served on the Marlboro Cultural Council, so I have some contacts there. And I think it's like bragging about your kid when you have something that you're that proud of. You can't kind of wait to trap somebody and talk to them about it and show them your wallet full of baby pictures. I'm really looking forward to that aspect of going out there and going to community meetings and being at public libraries and things like that and saying, you can't believe the great stuff we have going on here. I'm so excited to talk to you about it. I think that part of the job, the ambassador for AMSA, is something that will be a strength for me. Taking those and turning it into fundraising and building the capital is another level that I'm ready to take on, and I'm excited about that as well. I think that it is absolutely the biggest priority for the board coming up in the 5 years, and for the ED is this capital campaign and this facilities. We absolutely need to make this happen, and where the moment is now. We've been planning and getting ready for this in a laboriously long process that took mountains and mountains and hours of labor to get us this point where we can do it, and I'm so excited. I've been thinking about a new building since I got here. So thinking about how we can make that happen is exciting. I have some ideas. You know what I was thinking? Marlboro has like a gala, like a ball. Like, can we have like a prom, like a fundraising prom? Like that's a capital campaign. Teachers love going to the prom, right? We're crashing the kids' prom, and bring our friends and family and make it. You know, like I would love to sort of be part of the brainstorming process. That's not the same thing. We also need some really big ticket donors. We can't just sort of bake sale our way here to this. But I'm excited about that part.
Somebody's here.
Oh, come in.
This is great, and I appreciate also the opportunity to have been able to talk to you this morning. I'm going to ask with the analogy of the mountain climbing, which I really love that. Thinking of the ED role as your mountain, what hiking sticks do you think you're going to need, and how will you get them?
The team that's already here in place is fantastic, and they will absolutely be my hiking sticks. And especially in the beginning, there'll be a steep learning curve. I am humble enough to know that I will need to rely on people. I'm smart, I'm a quick study, I have confidence that I can learn it, but that will be a steep learning curve. And I will rely on some people that I trust and some people that I know have done the job. And I know, I'm coming in and knowing the team that's in place, I think is helpful for me. I think Ellen will continue to be a resource for me. Ellen has sort of mentored me, and whether she's here in a formal role or I'm just sort of texting her and she's on the beach, that's okay too. So I will rely on that. Ellen's also kind of talked to me about how the Massachusetts Charter School sets up executive directors with support networks, and I would definitely be relying on that. I'm always somebody who, no matter what role I find myself in, sort of reaching out to other people and making, you know, whether it's a Facebook group or a professional association, I'm the type of person that finds tremendous value in that and likes to contribute to that. So I know I would use those types of resources as well.
The Education Committee has been talking recently about the fact that testing, SATs, things like that are becoming test optional in many places, becoming less important. We've also been discussing exploring the routes for measuring student success in non-college pathways. What are your thoughts on ways that we could measure that success, especially with testing becoming something that is less used?
I think that sort of test scores have always been sort of part of the bread and butter at AMSA. If you read the charter, that is something that people clearly valued. If the tests are no longer serving that need, that they're not fulfilling that role, then we're gonna have to come up with other things. I think while I know that standardized testing can sometimes be looked down upon, I think that the accountability that holds AMSA to, and that standard, especially when we were starting out new and we're like, who are these people? Are they doing, does anybody know what they're doing? Those sort of benchmarks that let you compare yourself to other schools in the area and nationally are important to us. I think we've always sort of held them as important. If SATs are becoming a test that no longer is able to serve as a benchmark because either our kids aren't taking it or our kids are the only ones taking it and nobody else is, then what else? I think then you have to kind of adapt and look at what else there is. We obviously still have MCAS and maybe it's ACT and AP scores have always been valuable to us, and something that we as a community have said is a measure of the accountability of what we're doing. As an AP teacher myself, I've taught four separate AP curriculums here at AMSA. I enjoy that challenge of knowing that at the end of the year, we're going to see where we are with everybody, right? I can't just at the end be like, these kids did great, believe me. You don't have to believe me, right? That's the idea. So if there are other measures of success, I don't think that those need to be the only ones. I think that I would want to keep those on the menu. If we want to expand the menu, I think that is a great way to do it, and I'm open to suggestions for that. I think, though, the charter sets AMSA's mission out to prepare kids for college. So in terms of non-college success stories, that I'm wondering what you mean by that. I would still want us to make sure that we're being faithful to our mission, that we have high college, that most of our kids are graduating. We have high matriculation rates at 2- and 4-year colleges. I mean, that's, one of my students just told me he was joining the Marines, so I think there's always going to be that number of students that is choosing another path, but I think that the mission of our school is to prepare kids for college. I think that's fairly clear, and I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to deviate from that mission. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Somewhat.
Do you want to clarify?
I am still interested in, there are students who will elect trade schools and options like that. How can we support them so they will succeed as well? Like, it is becoming far more known that there are other options and that they are valuable routes to success. And the mission statement is that we will prepare all students of all backgrounds. Well,
a trade school, if they're leaving AMSA with a degree, with a diploma, and they're going to a trade school, that's different from like a vocational school. So I think that we're still in the business here of setting them up for post-secondary success. So we're still looking at, do they have the work ethic skills, the writing skills, the communication skills? I mean, all of the skills that we're setting them up for, whatever they're going to, are those things going to serve them well? I think there's, I don't think the skills we're hopefully the skills that we're hoping that our AMSA students leave here with, I don't think those are ever wasted. Whether you're in the Marines or in trade school or at Harvard or at whatever field you are ending up here, the skills that we're hoping that our kids have are going to serve them well no matter where they are.
Sort of a follow-up question, bear with me. So every organization...
You get close to the microphone.
Every organization, and schools especially, are afraid of change. The folks who work here, and that's our secret sauce, right? So imagine, you've got the role, and instead of change, I like to use the word adapt. I think it's a little less scary. And it could be any situation. What Zach is describing, I think, is on a lot of parents' minds. And it could be anything, but just walk us through how you would go about being an agent of adaptation instead of change. For
yes.
Something that needs to change. I'm not saying that,
right. Yeah, I think that human nature, that we resist change, is Absolutely, and I have it too. I don't even like if I show up and someone's in my parking spot, which we don't have parking spots. So, but we, we're creatures of habit, and when our little routines get disrupted, we, ooh. But so I think that the key to that is, and I've been through it many times, and sometimes when a change happens, I bristle. But the key is I need to know what the value of the change is. Why this change is worth adapting to or adopting. I'm thinking of Google Classroom when we did that and we came back in and we have this new platform and I don't want to learn a new platform and now my email's in a different thing and I've got to click the Rubik's Cube and I can't find it and I get frustrated. But so I sometimes am a little bit reluctant, I'm a little slow to the game, but once I convert, this is a really good and valuable change. And I think at that point, because I sometimes am not coming from the technical background, I can speak to people in a way that helps them see the value of the change. This is a tool that is going to help us reach students. It's going to help you have less parent complaints because they are going to be able to follow along, or it is going to help you with your grading because it's all there in front of you. Your papers are not going to get lost, or whatever the change really is. And if it doesn't have value, I don't know why we're adopting it. So if I can't persuade you as to the value of the change, we shouldn't adopt it. Once I am on board with the change, then I can be a passionate advocate for that change and persuading you as to the value of that change.
Thank you.
Now, maybe to piggyback on that, so let's say you're doing that with a person, but now you're executive director, you have to do it with different stakeholders. So that's another level of challenge. Is it the same at a different level, or do you think there's something that you need to do differently to make sure you're talking to teachers and parents?
I think if you're adopting a change, that before you adopt that change, whatever change it is, you need to know why it is valuable to every stakeholder. So I don't think it changes because, I mean, it might change in the way that you have to process it, but if a change is only good for teachers and it makes things worse for students and families and somebody else, then that might not be the change that we need right now. So if I can't sell it to every stakeholder, then I don't believe in the change yet.
Same thing.
You want to go, Roger?
Well, I want to give a chance to those on the phone, so I don't know, Jill or Laura, if you're itching to ask a question, but we haven't given you a chance. Now is the time. You guys still there?
Hi, this is Laura. Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Jess. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what experience you've had kind of overseeing and managing budgets and, working on the financial end. And then if that's minimal, how you see yourself kind of getting up to speed in that area and kind of really learning how to work within that area.
Yep, thank you. So I think my experience working with budgets, I've been part of the budget process here at AMSA, which is the budget process has teachers involved in that process. So at some point in the process, teachers get asked for their requests, and then those come up through the department chairs, and then those department chairs are feeding that to Ellen. So I'm involved with managing the budget that I have for my classroom or my program. Even as on a small scale in a club, I'm the advisor of the Quiz Bowl Club. I need to come up with a proposed budget. What are my, what money will I have coming in? What money will I need to be spending that on? So I think that in that sense, then you're dealing with more moving parts. It's a bit more zeros at the end of the numbers and more moving parts. And so in that sense, I would rely on Liana McLaren, who's our business manager and our financial director, and is fabulous. And I would, and I know I'm actually taking a class right now on economics and of educational operations, so I am learning about the process. The tuition is our starting, that's our revenue. We don't have a lot of control over that money. It's sort of you get what you get, and the state we're at sort of their what they're giving us, and how that gets, the process where that quarterly is getting adjusted, and all the way up until June 30th when we're getting our final adjustments, and the limitations on the budget, the salary requirements, and how that's affected by the union contract. And then there's a certain amount that's non-discretionary, like those types of things, and then there's a part that's discretionary. And then the part of the budget, I'm aware that AMSA's buildings, for instance, are not in the greatest state of repair, and we need to be ready to spend apparently a whole bunch of money on a chiller for a building, because there's not going to be any air conditioning in a building. And I've been there when the classroom's 80 degrees and the HVAC system is not working. So I think making sure that the budget has the wiggle room that we need to deal with the fires that pop up, that we know are going to pop up, because we know what kind of facilities we're dealing with, and making sure that I'm listening to the advice of Liana and Eric Lane and the facilities crew, and the union, and all of those factors playing into the budget process. Yeah.
So did you have a follow-on, Laura?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
So I'd like to follow on that question then. So definitely. So how would you lead the development in balancing the various needs of the school? Because clearly we have more needs than we have budget, which is not only true of AMSA, but true about every organization.
True of every household budget.
So how you as a leader would you balance the needs between the needs of the operational needs of the school, the building a new building, the capital needs of the school, and the compensation of the staff?
I think that the study of economics is the study of scarcity, and the study of budgets is the study of scarcity. So, like you say, there's not enough to go around. So when we prioritize things, we are making difficult decisions. I would want to make sure that the decisions that I made about budget mean that we're prioritizing the resources that's in a way that support the mission of what we're doing, number one. And number two, that ultimately, as an executive director, my job is to be a steward for the institution. And I think that the money is really key there. I cannot spend all of the money in 1 year and not have any money left for 5 years and 10 years. So constantly balancing those two, making sure we're not taking short-term gains at the expense of the long-term stability of the institution would be a priority of mine. And that those long-term goals are guided by our mission and our purpose, that we're ultimately about educating students, and it's got to be about student learning. And even when it's an HVAC system, the students can't learn if it's freezing cold. So that it all boils down to student learning, and the budget has to support that.
Thank you.
I'm going to take the question in a different direction, and it has to do with sort of the challenges the school community overall faced with COVID and coming out of it. And we talked a lot about the academic and the social and emotional gaps, but I'm wondering what lessons you're taking away from AMSA's resilience perhaps in that, and what will you do going forward to either proactively prepare the school community overall for change that happens, or anything else that you might do to ensure that the staff and the community feel ready for another challenge?
So is your question, what did I learn, or what did AMSA learn from the COVID challenge?
However you want to answer.
Okay. One of the things that I think hopefully we all learned was that the role of teacher is in no danger of quickly being replaced by TED Talks. And I don't mean to make light of that. And I think one of the things that we've really learned is the supreme value of the human connection, that education is ultimately a people business, and you can read a book and get a calculus lesson, you can watch a YouTube video and get a calculus lesson. So I'm told. I haven't actually gotten the calculus lessons myself, but I'll see you later. But that what it's really about is that human connection. It's teacher to student, and it's also student to student. A lot of times, having my students, all the time I tell my students, okay, turn to each other and explain this concept. So I think what we have really learned, and the teachers, how lonely we were. We thought it was great that we could wear our pajamas and not wake up until 2 minutes before we had to be online, but that was great. But the loneliness that we had shut up in our houses, and to not have that moment in the teacher's lounge where you're sharing that success story, or where you're sharing that moment of frustration where somebody helps you through it, or just somebody sort of pats you on the shoulder and says, I know, I've been there too. I think that education is a human business, and we have got to be there to help each other human with each other. So I think that is the biggest lesson of COVID. We need each other, and we need each other not just remotely. We need to shake each other's hands and look at each other in the eyes, and we need to have a cup of coffee with them. That's what I think the lesson is. I don't know where we take that going forward. I think, though, I mean, maybe the next challenge we face is also a pandemic-y health crisis, but more than likely it's a crisis of an entirely different flavor that we can't even anticipate. That's what makes them crises. If we knew what they would be, we'd already have a plan. So maybe the lesson is, ultimately, we will have the solutions for each other, and we'll support each other, and we'll get them through there, and we need to be open and humble and compassionate and supportive. We need to say yes to each other when someone else needs help. Because if I say yes to you today, then it makes it easier for me to ask you for a yes tomorrow.
That's right. I have a very broad question, but I'm curious if you have given any thought on anything you might want to share about your thoughts and your plan for your first 90 days. So let's say it's July 1st. What's in your docket? What's in your calendar? What you plan to do the first 90 days?
Raul, I've thought of almost nothing else for the last few weeks.
Excellent. We want to hear about it.
I fall asleep and the thoughts are rolling. I think I've already kind of covered this. I think in my first 90 days I would want to sit down with the office support staff. I would want to sit down with the leadership team. I would want to sit down with the department chairs, and I would want to listen first, listen to what they need, how can I serve them, and be listening to them to develop a strategic plan for us going forward. I would want to concentrate on that first opening staff week where we are laying out for staff what we are committed to, what our plan is. We're welcoming our new staff and what they need to know about what makes AMSA special and what makes AMSA great and what makes AMSA tick, what all the little things that you need to have in place so that we can make the magic happen. So the first 90 days would be 2 months, the summer, and then the first month of school. I would want to think about how I would want to launch what I would say to students, welcoming them to campus, what we're looking forward to, what our priority is for the year, what we're going to be working on, what I hope they get out of it, what I expect from them, what they can expect from me. That's my first 90 days. And then also during those 90 days, being ready for that plan to be thrown out at every single second and minute, because all of the things that you planned are not what's going to happen today, because the job is dealing with the things that get in the way of your plans.
And being ready, we talked about adaptabilities. I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's the job. Men plan, God laughs.
Jess, you said something today that really stuck with me, and it was, and I'll paraphrase and you please correct me, but it was just that trust can be broken in a second. Well, your lead into that was much more effective, but my takeaway was how brittle trust can be in relationships. And the reason I'm asking is I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on what a successful board and ED relationship looks like. And then as a follow-up, and I can remind you, you've been here all day, the principal of the building and the ED, because I think that relationship is also critical to a successful school organization. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Do you mean principal, P-A-L?
I do.
Okay.
Principal.
So yeah, one of the things that I said that Don's alluding to is I've been at AMSA a long time. I've been through a lot of ups and downs, and one of the things that I have learned is that it takes a really long time to build trust, and that it can be broken in an instant, in a moment, and in a word. And my goal as an ED will be to never be that moment where that trust is broken. So I think that the cost is so high. I think that we're still paying the price from broken trusts 10 years ago. That's how costly it is. That's how costly it is to an institution. And I want to be an ED that puts the institution first. I'm sure that there are things that are in place that are not the way I would have them by design, but changing them costs in terms of trust and of progress and of distraction. So even though they're not exactly the way I might design them, or if I would have chosen them to come out, the trust factor, the trust I would have to spend to change them is not worth it. So I think what I mean by that is I want to spend my time building trust, letting my staff know that I want to be someone that they can trust, and that I am showing them a level of professional trust. I don't think you just get trust. I think you build that by earning it and saying, I trust you to do this, and I trust your professional expertise in this matter, and I want to be someone who earns trust by giving trust. I think that is one of the reasons why I don't see myself making big, sweeping, dramatic, or sudden changes. I think that it indicates that you don't trust what's happening right now. And even if I could make a big sweeping change and get it exactly the way I want, all of the things I would have lost on the way are not worth it getting to that point. The role between the principal and the ED, I'm looking forward to working with Mike. Mike and I have had a few conversations about this, but that would be a #1 priority. I think Ellen and Mike have a fantastic working relationship. You can see the evidence of that, and the role that Mike sees for the day-to-day operations as a principal versus what he wants from me as an ED and how that support role works. It's a Venn diagram where those circles are going to overlap, but I would want to sort of be really clear about what he sees his job, and I want us to agree on what his job is and mine is. I've enjoyed working with Mike tremendously over the years. I see him as somebody that I would look forward to continuing to work with. And I think that the experience that he has in place already would make that possible and productive.
And then my only follow-up was just as far as the ED and the board relationship and how that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's
ED
okay.
board.
No, it's a long day.
You know, I talked to Ellen a little bit, well, not a lot about this, and you know, she's like, Jess, a lot of the job is the board. It's working with the board, managing the board, and so I'm ready for that. I think my board experience sort of helps me here. I've spent 4 years on the board in 2 different periods of time, one of which was quite contentious. So I recognize how important that role is, to have the ED and the board work together in a trusting way. the board needs to hire the ED, the board needs to evaluate the ED, the board needs to advise the ED, but the ED needs to execute. That's why it's called the executive director. So putting that plan in place would be my job. So I think that one of the really nice things about the AMSA board is the volunteer nature of it. Our board is really not like a pay a lot of money fundraising. Like these people, you are all here for the work, are here for the because you care about the value of what AMSA is doing, and so I think making sure the ED's role is to demonstrate that we're being faithful stewards of the institution, that we're doing things that are in the long-term health of the institution, that we're caring about committing to the mission of the school and making sure that all of our decisions are shaped by the mission, that we're acting in a way that honors the values that we all really care about and bring to the table, and hopefully that relationship is one that is productive, not even respectful. I think more than that, you would see value in what the ED is, and the ED sees value in what the board does. I think the day-to-day operations of the ED being separate from the oversight and strategic planning and vision of the board.
Thank you.
I think we got about 5 minutes left. More, I know you joined us late. I don't know if there's anything you had in mind you wanted to.
I actually got to ask Jess and spend some time with her today during lunch, so I'm good.
Very good.
She answered all my questions.
Any other questions from the board? Anybody on the phone, Roger?
Unless there's some, I'll ask the phone first. I've got one more. I asked a number of questions already.
I also think we should let Jess have a chance to ask us the questions. So, but not hear anything from the phone, so go ahead, Roger.
So, what do you see as the biggest challenge for AMSA within the next 3 years?
Building facilities, capital fundraising. Full stop. I mean, there's other stuff, but that's the biggest challenge. And I think being at the precipice of this moment where we're going to make this happen, where we have been waiting for this to happen for years, that we've been in lawsuits and moldy classrooms, and I am so excited. We have been waiting and deserved this moment for so long. I'm so excited. So I think that is the #1 priority. We have got to make that happen for this community. That is not really a day-to-day operations thing. I think I think that's one of the things that the community is kind of frustrated about is, and believe me, from my years on the board, I know how many hours of work has gone into the acquisition, building tours, and the plans with architects, and it's so many, and then sometimes it falls apart, and it's no fault of anybody. I feel like the amount of work to sort of feel like you have not really produced very much tangible is frustrating for, I think, everybody. So getting to the point where we can actually start to see the fruits of all of this labor is going to be so rewarding. I think that will be one of, I love the concept of legacy. What am I doing today to make sure that I'm leaving this better tomorrow? And I think that is going to be one of Ellen's, like just the legacy of the buildings is going to be one of the more, she has a greater legacy than that, but the facilities and the building, getting us to this point is really tremendous. Yeah.
So as executive director, how would you help us meet that challenge?
My goal as an executive director will be to strengthen AMSA's roots in this community, to hopefully have AMSA's, all of the communities that AMSA is involved in, really start to recognize the value that AMSA brings to their communities, see that as building those community connections, having those, and so that leads to making those connections. Hopefully, maybe there's financial contributions that come out of that, or maybe there's other connections or resources that come out of that. That will be one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing.
Thank you. Anything you want to ask us?
Yeah. What do you see, what will the board do to help me as an ED in my first year?
I can start with
How do you see you supporting this success?
Right. So my first reaction has to do with trust. I think we have learned a lot. Well, I have learned a lot in the last 5 years sitting on the board. I came in as an external board member. I didn't have any kids in school, and now I do. So now I'm not only a board member, I'm a parent. So
You trusted us enough to trust us with your kids.
And that being part of the board actually was a big part of that.
Oh,
I understood more what AMSA was all about by sitting here in this room month over month.
If you see the sausage made and you still want to send your kids, that's the mark, right?
And actually, I love the way you put that, because that implies that we are doing hard work here and that it requires trust. So we need to take our dirty laundry out, and we need to talk about the difficult conversations and whatnot. And we all need to agree that we're all in this together. So one of the first things that come to mind is clarity in the strategic plan, which, you were here when we had the strategic plan meeting a couple of weeks ago, and that to me is the closest we've come to documenting it and coming up with a plan that, hopefully once we get through this, tough decision of the ED search, we're going to move on to talking about that again. But, that's one thing, helping the executive director follow through on that and have an opinion about that plan as we set shorter term goals than what the strategic plan says. But more importantly behind that is the trust. So is there anything that we need to take? I always think of it as like organizational therapy. Let's talk about what are the things that are keeping us from being more effective on the way we work with each other, because we are in this together. And if there's any moment in the last few years that it hasn't felt like that, then we should work on that. We should address that. We should try to not necessarily get too hung up on the history, but also say, how could we have done things differently back then? How can we make sure that we still have a working relationship with the board? And I think part of that, and maybe this is the third point, is I think there's not a good understanding of what the board does. I'm not saying by the executive director, I'm saying by the community as a whole. And I think we can, and we've talked about this ad nauseum in governance and in other committees, I'm sure. How do we let people understand the role of the board? And again, we talked about that in strategic planning as well. We are setting the direction of the ship, we're not sailing the ship. And there's also consequences to that statement. So educating and communicating, over-communicating. I would like the opinion of the executive to say, how do you feel about the board getting more direct communication with representatives from the staff and the teachers? Because I have to say, the first time I went to a staff meeting was last week. And it was to address concerns as opposed to share good news and do good things, right? So should we do more of that? Should we, and I wouldn't make that decision, the board shouldn't be making that decision unilaterally, but that's how we would support the executive director. And the other part of it is identifying gaps and where do we need to get, just like with the teachers, professional development, coaching, training, resources that we can put forward as a board to give to the executive director. I don't know. Anybody want to add to that?
More tangible. I'll agree with everything you said. I also think it's the role of the board to network. I think it's part of our job to own that we all have a goal of fundraising and creating an endowment, and there's a lot of great things happening. But it's our role we need to also take an active role in that. And I also think, and this might come off the wrong way, but a lot of our job is to stay out of the way, right? I mean, we have a purpose, and we should stick to our purpose. And I think that I've seen in other communities, you see it nationwide, and it's more on the school committee side, right? So we're not a school committee, but school committees nationwide are overstepping for a lot of different reasons that we don't need to get into here. But I like the idea that we understand our board's mission, our board's role, and we stick to that. Now, are we here for advice? Are we a sounding board for the ED? Sort of a private way for the ED to say, gosh, what do you think of this? Of course. But you should never feel that one member is pushing a pet project. One member should not be influencing anything. So I think being really respectful that we're a board, we're not individuals. You know, we only really should be acting if a majority of the board wants to act on something. So I guess I'm really respectful of process. We should help with the fundraising, and we should always be ears for you to speak with, and you should feel a trust in that you can sound things off. So.
That would be the one thing, just to echo what you just said on the very end piece, is listening.
Yeah.
I think everything that Dawn and Raul said in terms of, we're not a working board, we're a governing board, right? And we all learned a couple weeks ago, there's a difference, and we have to really stick to that function. And I think doing that and just listening, knowing what's going on inside, right? In roles of leadership, there's a lot that happens on the inside. And we're sort of that face, and we can only make decisions with really good data. And the more that we can listen to you and what you have to say and of your experience, then I think that's how we make good decisions.
Well, I think we talked a lot about the mountain climbing and what support we can provide, and I feel like the board also comes with a variety of leadership and life experiences. And while I understand, where Dawn is coming from with regard to the board as a collective body, not pushing any one agenda unless we're all in agreement on what that should be, the sounding board part comes from also being able to use us for each of our strengths. So being able to know which board member can offer which kind of advice, and being able to even one-on-one work with board members from that perspective, or for one of us to be able to say, hey, I know someone who can help with that, and introduce you to somebody that might be able to help. Those are all places where the board could be doing a lot more, but I think it also depends on how the ED wants to use the board in that regard. So it goes both ways, I think.
That's a great point.
It's fine. I love you.
Love you
No,
too.
you're not.
Sorry.
So, we all need to hear that every once in a while. Anything else, Jess? Last thoughts?
Yeah, I do have a final thought. I recognize that I am asking the AMSA community to take a risk with me. And I recognize that I'm asking to jump a bunch of levels on an org chart. It's not a normal path. I'm not a traditional candidate, and that is a risk. But here is what I would like to say. That the choice here is not between risk and no risk. The risk is you can have me who has some experiences that I know you wish I had more of. Me too. But what you do know that you're getting is somebody who wholeheartedly loves the school, loves the mission, cares about what we are doing, has committed to it, has an institutional knowledge in the history of the institution of where we are, where we've been, that I think is difficult for anybody else to match. I don't think there's anybody who cares about doing things the way AMSA wants to do them more than me. So the risk is somebody who might have more experience in certain areas, but who might not have that love, that passion, that commitment to what AMSA can be, is, and what really makes us the institution that I care desperately about. So if the choice was risky or not risky, that's a fairly easy choice. That is not the choice we have. It's flavor X of risk or flavor Y of risk. And we have tried flavor Y quite a few times, and sometimes that does not work out. And so I think that I don't want you to think that I don't recognize that you are taking a risk with me, and I absolutely appreciate that, and I will approach this job with a humility and a willingness to work and to fix and to mend any of those gaps and learn what I need to do. I'm a smart person. I've learned a lot of important and difficult things in my life. I got a few more lessons left in me, and I just absolutely know that I can do a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jess. All right. Unless anybody has any other comments for Jess, thank you for that closing statement. You're welcome to stay there if you want, or you can get off the hot seat if you prefer.
Please turn this off.
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, the only other item on the agenda is to give a bit of a review of the search process. And I think Jess just reminded us that this is a risky process and something that it's the biggest decision that I believe this board will make this year. And as such, I know there's a lot of concerns out in the community about how the process was conducted. So I know most of us on the board, since we've been here since we started this process, may already know everything that I'm about to say. But I am going to summarize it now for the main purpose of addressing those concerns. I am fully aware and acknowledge that even if I do that, some of those concerns might not be felt like they have been addressed, but I'll do the best I can. Also highlighting the fact that there are parts of the process that were confidential and I can only share so much, and there's a reason for that. So we wanted transparency, but there's trade-offs on how you can achieve the transparency. So I will summarize the process. You may remember that when we learned that Ellen decided to retire and she talked to us about a time frame, we then formed a search committee. So I believe that happened around the summer time frame, where the board appointed a search committee to be formed to act on behalf of the board to start the search process, to define the search process and to start the search process. That's not a required step by the bylaws. We could have said as a board, we're picking an executive director, we're doing our own search, and by the way, if we had done that, we could have done the whole process, or at least the beginning of that process, in executive session, without anybody knowing who we were talking to, how we were conducting the process, completely behind closed doors until the very end, until we had a finalist and deliberated. But we didn't do that because we knew the history, we knew the concerns, and we wanted to address the transparency in the process, and we wanted to give a voice to everybody. That's still the case. We want to respect those voices. We want to follow the intentional transparency that we said back then. When we defined that search committee, one of the first things that we did, so Dawn became the chair of that committee, she started working with Dr. Lewis on selecting who was going to be part of that search committee. People from the community, including parents, teachers, and board members, applied, for lack of a better term, saying they were interested in being part of that committee. Between Dawn and Anders, they kind of went through the people that applied, and the committee was formed. That committee had 5 staff members, teachers and staff members, 2 parents that are not board members, and 3 board members. If you look at the numbers and consider how committee work as far as voting and breaking down differences in opinions and selection process and whatnot, that gave the teachers a louder voice, higher numbers within the committee. And that was on purpose. We wanted that to be the case. The mandate of that committee was to come up with 2 to 3 candidates to present to the board. By our bylaws and by the role that the board needs to play from a governance perspective, the final decision about the executive director is the board's, the voting members of the board. So once that committee finished with their finalists and providing recommendations about the finalists, that is when the board takes over, and that's where we are right now. Considering the finalists, considering what we learned in the last couple of days, and still every step of the process is considering the feedback of the community, which is what I think is the most critical thing of what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, but we'll get to that. So the proceedings of the search committee leading up to those 3 candidates were kept confidential. And there's a reason for that. You might think that goes against the intentional transparency, but just imagine the fact that I'm pretty sure, and I can't say this for sure because I have to go back through every one of the candidates that we looked at, but I'm pretty sure most, if not all of the candidates that were considered already have a job. And if you think about people that might be applying for a future job, whether or not they have told their current employer, It would have been a very different search if we had said, this is completely open, everybody's going to know who's applying, and everybody's going to see every interview and whatnot. We would not have probably received any or most of the candidates, applicants that we got. So it is important for that part of the process to be confidential. And we're going to respect that confidentiality as much as we can. That goes to the identity of the applicants. It also goes to the process that we follow to kind of break the ties or break the discussion we had to come up with the 3 finalists. We did a lot of things when it came to that. And if anybody has heard any specifics about how that happened, I wish that hadn't happened, that you hadn't gone into the specifics, but you shouldn't read too much into that because we did many things and you probably heard only part of the things that we did. So we shouldn't come up with conclusions or reactions about how the selection was made and the things that were done or not done just because you know part of the process. One of the things that I heard from Jess this morning is that one of the challenges of the ED job is that she uses the analogy of the elephant, which some people might have heard before. When you have blind people, everybody touching one part of the elephant, and somebody touching the leg thinks this is a tree, somebody touches the trunk thinks this is a snake, and depending on the part of the elephant you might have a very different perspective. Only when you open your eyes and see the whole elephant, you know that it's an elephant. So same thing happens with the search process. I advise everybody to not assume that things were made in the search committee in the way you might think happened just because you know part of the process. I wish there was a way that I could clarify that without breaking the confidentiality. But speaking for myself, I will not break that promise just for the sake of transparency now. And that's a trade-off that's why this is a tough job. Because we want to be more transparent, but we can't break any other promises just because of that. So anyway, that part of the search process was confidential. And just to give numbers and maybe figures about how this happened. So after those people were selected and the search committee was formed, the kickoff meeting happened in August 2022. So I know the public part of this process is only a couple weeks, and you might think, oh, you're making all these decisions, rush decisions. We've been thinking about this and considering all the candidates since August last year, since the summer. The search firm, and a lot of you were involved in that, came to the school, and this was also part of the search process, I call it an assessment, and maybe it's a little bit of a misnomer, but conducting multiple interviews with different stakeholders, which we used to inform how we build the job posting. It actually helped us with the strategic planning. We actually reviewed some of that a couple weeks ago when we had strategic planning. And it's just another tool to understand how the school was feeling and the strengths and weaknesses of the school and how we were going to select our executive director. That happened in September, October timeframe at the beginning of the school year. The search committee met after that in late October to define the job profile, to review the summary of the interviews that happened as part of the school, and then use that to influence how we were going to search for a candidate. We did things like say, we don't want somebody that's going to come in and say that they're going to change the school and flip it upside down. That's not what we need. Let's turn away everybody that says that that's what they want to do. We did things like say, we want certain characteristics in this candidate, highly desirable, required, and whatnot, and that was a job profile that was posted, and it's still posted out there in the sourcing places, websites and in marketplaces, and that's part of what the search firm provides, is a network of sources for getting candidates. I made this comment last week to the teachers, but it's a specific question that somebody asked. Is the process still open for new applicants? Yes. By definition, the process only closes when we make an offer. And actually, even after we make an offer, when we hire an executive director, because things could fall out at the last minute. So it's still open for new candidates. So the official search was launched in November. So that was 4 months ago, right? November, December, January, February. So 4 months ago, we started collecting candidates. It went through January. The selection of the final candidate was done, as you know, in February when we announced that a couple of weeks ago. And the plan, and the original plan was to make an offer by late February, early March. And we're still hopefully on track for that, but we'll cross the bridge when we get there. So, and then again, the start date for the executive director is stated to be July 1st because Ellen's contract ends June 30th, and that was the original plan. The search firm screened 35 candidates that applied for the job. The search committee reviewed 12 of those. So the screening means that the search firm reviewed and interviewed 35 people, that the search committee didn't get to meet all of those, but we met 12 of those, or at least consider 12 of those, whether we met them in person or not. And then we actually interviewed and met 8 of those. And out of those 8 is where the 3 that everybody knows about came about. Well, now 4. Because as you know, after we announced the finalists, we learned that 2 of the other 3 candidates decided to step down. The reasons why they stepped down, I cannot answer, you can ask them. That's the shortest answer I can give to that. It's part of that confidentiality that we talked about. They have provided the reason to the search committee, and in some cases to some of the board members, but they did so in confidence, so I will not break that confidence. You can ask them. So, and that's when the search committee once again met and had the opportunity to give Jess an opportunity to step up, and she did. And that's why Jess is now here. We have 2 candidates. So here's where we are. We have 2 candidates, which we spent the last 2 days meeting with, getting to know them, getting to know their plans, getting to know what they're all about, and how they would work with the school. The board, and I'll reiterate this, the search committee was a mandate of the board, but the board, the individuals that make up the board that make the decision, and the voting members of the board, with the exception of Dawn, Samini, and I, the 3 that were part of the search committee, were not involved up until now. So they're as involved as the rest of the community because we couldn't meet, we can't have a quorum of the board in any meeting that's not a public meeting. So now is when the board gets involved, and it is the board's decision on the next steps. And we're not going to make the decision today, as we have already explained. There's no vote today. We are going to solicit feedback. So the specific thing I do want to make sure everybody takes note of, and I know this has been communicated, but again, I'm trying to be super explicit. Now is the time, I think, and we talked about this today, understanding the candidates and how the board as individuals feel about the candidates, one factor of the decision. A very important factor, at least speaking for myself, is how the community reacts to the candidates and how we expect them to be welcome to the community when they walk through that door. There's no way we can predict that, but there is a way that we can gather feedback about that. And that is why we're taking the time in the next 2 weeks to listen to anybody that's willing to give their feedback to us that we will consider. So what are we gonna do with your feedback? That will affect our decision. And I'm not saying that every single piece of feedback will be, like, if you think one way, we're gonna go your way, because that's impossible, because I'm pretty sure we're gonna get opinions from any side of the, any opinion that I can't even think about. So we will consider it. We will consider your feedback. It is important for us to receive your feedback. I truly mean it. And I said this last week to the teachers, and I'm going to say it again, and I hope people trust me when I say there's nobody on this board, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that wants to do anything to the school that is not in the best interest of the school. And the school means the teachers, the school means their students primarily. It also means our family, our community. So we will not make a decision that makes the greater majority of the school uncomfortable. We will not. So that is why we need your feedback, because we want to know how the majority of the school feels about the candidates. So I'm going to ask I'm going to give 2 options for people that want to provide feedback between now and the next meeting, which is scheduled for March 2nd after we come back from break, so 2 weeks from now. You can, if you want your anonymity to be preserved in front of the board, or for whatever other reason, I would suggest that all feedback gets channeled through John Tarvin, who's our search consultant. His email is jtarvin, T-A-R-V as in Victor, I-N, at eostransitions.com. That is the preferred way to provide feedback. If anybody feels I'm not comfortable sending my feedback to John, I'd rather go directly to the board. I don't mind about anonymity. I just want to go directly to the board. You can email me. And there's a special email for the board chair. It's amsa.bot. So B as in boy, O as in off, and T as in trustee, .chair@amsacs.org. That is the email. I will receive that. In general, I will share that with the whole board, because if it affects our decision. If you don't want that to be shared with the whole board, let me know in your email, and I'll make sure I'll consider that, and find a way to summarize everybody's feedback anonymously. Am I missing anything, Sarah, process-wise?
No, I was going to say, I can send out an email to the staff.
Yes.
Both emails.
We will send a communication just about to clarify next steps. I know we talked about this in the past, but I think it's important to be super clear about what the next 2 weeks will be like. So we're collecting feedback for the next 2 weeks. We're enjoying our break, thinking about what we learned in the last couple of days and everything about the background of the 2 candidates. And And when we get back together in March, the board will deliberate and we'll make a decision. So we'll talk about that next board meeting.
Question: in addition to the posting those emails to the staff, is there a way that we can put something on the website so that the public
You
can?
just said that you were going to do that. It's going to go out, Mike will put something out to everybody.
I'm sorry, you mean something on the website, meaning an announcement about?
So Sarah was saying that she would make sure to email the
No,
staff.
but then I heard that Mike's going to put something out.
No, just coordinate with Mike to also get something on the website so that parents can go there to get the email addresses so they can.
Well, I would email it to them. I wouldn't put it on the website.
Yeah.
because
I
it's
would,
public.
yeah, I don't often try to disagree, but I would actually, just to preserve the community aspect, I think if we could email the staff and email families and guardians, that actually sort of, I don't know,
Yeah.
having someone just wander to the website and throw some feedback,
Correct.
that's just my only.
But I think what you meant is an announcement on the website about how to provide feedback, right? But yes, the email, I think email seems to work fine for our
Email would be a
community.
better.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the whole
100%.
parents have the same,
Yep.
are informed and can provide us feedback.
Yeah, no, Mike and Sarah definitely suggested probably just right before the meeting, so.
All right.
I want it.
Any questions from the board about the process? Either what's behind us or what's ahead of us? Right?
I think just a little bit more clarity on what deliberation might look like on the 16th, and a little more guidance for the
On the
board.
2nd.
On the 2nd, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, today is the 16th.
Can you speak up a little?
Sure. Just thinking about what that board meeting looks like in terms of what deliberation looks like for the board on that day might be helpful.
So frankly, I haven't thought through how that's going to happen. That's one of my, it's difficult, you know. I've been involved in executive director search for nonprofit organizations. None of them have had open meeting requirements. So I feel it's very difficult to be candid knowing that the candidates are listening. So I'm not sure how we do that and still make an optimal decision. I do think that collecting the feedback and summarizing it and providing it to the board could be a way to, without deliberating in advance, to have the board receive and think that in advance before you show up to the meeting and start talking about it. I don't know, did you have any suggestions, I guess?
No, I think that is it. That I think I, like you, have been thinking about, well, what would that look like? And I agree with you. I'm definitely looking forward to all of the community and staff input. To me, that's going to really take the weight of my thought process, because I'm looking to hear from everyone in terms of
Yes.
what my vote should look like. So I look forward to that. I've made my individual assessments, but I'm definitely looking forward to much more feedback.
Just food for thought. So these are the types of things that I've been really excited to get to this stage, because just the three of us have sort of had our eyes into how this all works. But you know, there's so many of us, and everyone's voice is equal. How I've seen it done, because these are public processes. You summarized great today. I don't think we have to do that again, but that's your call, Raul. You did a great job.
I'll summarize the process again.
We could certainly summarize some of the feedback. When you're dealing with someone applying for a job in the public, maybe I just have too much sympathy, empathy, which I'm not usually accused of having. Sometimes you talk just about the candidate's strengths, right? So you don't even go to the negative unless you're real. And I'm even just assuming there's a world where we're at a point someday of making a decision. We might not feel we're ready on the 2nd. So just so you don't think I have a preset plan. But when we feel comfortable, maybe we talk as a group about the 2 people, the strengths, the 3 people, whoever it is. And we talk about their strengths and what we think AMSA needs, right? So there's the feedback, and then I think there's the very real job we have, which is hearing everything. And everything we know, what does the school need right now? So those are the things I'll think about. What do we need? What did we hear? And then talking about it in a way that I find is humane, right? I don't want to be in a world where we're, here was a weakness, and here was, can you imagine any of us in this world going through this process? If we hired teachers like this, it's terrible. So it's a necessary evil. I like the transparency, but I'm very well aware of how it makes the people who are being dissected feel. So those are my thoughts, and we can all think about it. And when we start on the 2nd, we should start with how would we like to proceed, because it just isn't Raul, me, Samini, it's all of us.
Rule question, do we have we given, and I apologize if I missed this, but a deadline for people to give feedback so that then we all have time to sort of read through that summary and give it?
We haven't yet, so we can decide that now.
And Mike was asking me, and I kind of looked in, and I think I said my suggestion for us to think about was the middle of vacation week. So our experience with the surveys that we send out, and Sarah sends probably 12 reminders, people either do it or they aren't interested in doing it. And honestly, I don't fill out the surveys. I'm not throwing stones. My wife does. So my point is, people do it or they lose track and they don't do it, and I'm not picking on anyone. So I say middle of next week gives time for John to pull it together and to disseminate it, and hopefully we have a weekend to read it. So, I mean, it's just a suggestion, but... And I mean like 6 days from now.
Right,
but that's just a,
Just one thought about or against that maybe. If people are going to be on break, would we want to give them an opportunity for them to use that weekend to send their feedback? But maybe to your point, that's not going to make much of a difference. So.
Because we meet the Thursday after break, so it's all data turnaround. So what do we think? I'd rather get it all in and maybe we can even remind once, but.
Do you have suggestions,
Sarah?
Well, I'm just thinking it is break, and I think that might look not so great if we do that. I think that the feedback's the really important part that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I know you need time to look at it, but I think they need time to put it together. It's kind of a tough one, but I think that giving them as much time as you possibly can. This is tough. If it wasn't a
do we want to say Monday, the 27th?
Sure. It's a discussion, so.
Yeah.
I was thinking, it's going to be challenging to turn it all around, but I think, or maybe we put a final close on the 27th, but we could also, from John Tarvin and from Earl, if we could get a sneak peek from the feedback that arrived up to next Wednesday.
Shouldn't you be looking,
and then,
you might want to be collecting it and reading it as it comes.
Well, no. Well, John's got to do his work, but if John could give us 2 reports, one initial for the feedback that arrived up through Wednesday, and then a second report of the feedback that arrived between Wednesday and the Monday, and if we could do the same thing within the feedback that arrived to the board, I think that might balance out us being able to process the feedback and providing feedback for the people who are actually going on vacation and are on plane between Friday evening and Sunday.
So what day are we looking at, Sarah? You have that? I can pull it.
You mean for
So a sneak peek, I'm going to put dates on that. So a sneak peek on the 22nd, which is the Wednesday next week. And then deadline for feedback on the 27th, which is Monday.
Which would give us the final feedback on ideally the 28th.
Right.
If John,
let's check with John on that one.
Would you say that again?
So our deadline for providing feedback, February 27th, which is a Monday.
That's for the board feedback.
Well,
for everybody.
All
feedback from all
feedback channels.
But we will ask John, I will commit myself, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to try and give John a week.
So 23rd is, okay. Yeah, and then, so before that, not that it's a hard deadline for people to stop providing feedback, but it's that the board will ask John and me, that if I'm receiving also feedback, to share with the board by the 23rd to have a sneak peek. Like the board will start, if they already have feedback on the 23rd, we'll share with the board so that we can have the weekend to process that, and then we'll only catch up with whatever comes between the 23rd and the 27th.
And that still gives us a week before we meet on the 2nd.
Right.
That sounds good.
Okay, so that's the plan. I hope you, sorry. So we'll communicate, we'll write down our communication, Mike, don't worry, we'll figure it out, we'll send it out to the community hopefully tomorrow, if not tonight, and then we'll meet on the 2nd. We'll meet in person on the 2nd. There will be public comment on the 2nd. We have been talking about governance. I know we didn't have the last governance meeting, but one of the things that came out of the strategic planning conversation was an idea to have more clear rules about public comment. I think for this particular topic, we should try that out. And I know governance had some ideas on how to spell that out, so we'll have that for that meeting. For example, we're talking about having like a 2-minute limit on when people come to public comment. You can, it's still, the regular channels are still open, so teachers that want to communicate through the teacher rep, and parents that want to communicate through Laura and the parent rep, it's still a channel that always exists. And then we'll meet on the 2nd.
And this will be an in-person.
It will be in person. We do have another board meeting on the 9th, a special board meeting to make a decision about the project, and that will be a remote meeting. And I think that will be the last chance we'll have to do that because we're in March.
Yes.
So we'll see each other more often in person, which I think is a good thing.
You have another?
Yes.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Of course.
Yeah, this is Laura. Is there some point in the process we're getting feedback from parents, community members that met with the candidate? At what point are we connecting with various references of the candidates as well? Is that something the search firm is doing and we'll have that feedback along with the deliberation, or is that not part of the process?
Yes, it is part of the process, and I should also say the other part that we haven't talked about is the background checks. So even if that doesn't happen before we make a selection, the decision the vote would take will be contingent on that step happening without any issues. We don't expect that to be an issue, but that is the very last step. But we actually already have received, the search committee received some reference communication, unsolicited references, I would call it that way, which is also part of the feedback. But if parents want to reach out to references and whatnot, I guess it's up to them, and that will be part of their feedback that they provide back to us. But the search firm is also doing that, and has already done that.
Yeah, that's
so.
part of the service.
Yeah. Good question.
You have another meeting on the 23rd of March.
Okay, so we have one more.
And I was wondering if that'll be your last chance to do remote.
So we could do remote, and my challenge for that, not to make this about me, but I'm going to be 6 hours behind. And the the March 23rd.
You can change the date. You don't have to meet on that date.
But does anybody want to change to March 23rd? I mean, if we don't meet in March, we're going
to... We also could meet without you, it's okay.
Yes,
I
can have a day off. So
don't feel stressed.
I'm fine with that. The vice chair will take over.
Remote?
Do you want to decide now, remote? Remote on the 23rd?
Sure.
Since it's the last chance we have.
It's been a lot of time on campus, which I'm enjoying, but let's do one more remote in case they take it away.
Okay.
And you just remind me of something that I want to do before we adjourn, which is to thank the search committee. I believe we struck a balance of hearing everybody's voices and having different stakeholders represented. I think we worked well together. We did have difference in opinions on how to do things, but I hope resolved them and things came out at the end of that process. And things that we didn't expect happened that were not, in my opinion, the fault of the search committee in any way. So I do want to thank everybody that was part of the search committee. I want to thank the parents that were part of the search committee. I want to thank the teachers. I think every time, one comment that I've made to the teachers, every time I come to the school, and this is true for the last 5 years and it's true for the last 2 weeks, I learn of something that makes me feel more and more proud of AMSA. And through the search committee, I've been more and more proud of our teachers and the way they participated, on the leadership that we have at the teacher level. There's really examples of leadership, people that don't have leadership roles, and that really shows what leadership is, that whether you're taking a leadership role when that's not your job. So I want to thank those in the search committee that showed those skills and those traits. I want to thank all the time that we put into that. I want to thank John for leading us through that and providing his expertise and his network and helping us see that process. And I want to thank Dawn for her spending 2 days in the school, living in the school here, which I think has been helpful as well. Yeah, and Samani as well for helping us out. And some of you might not know, we actually have used our resources. Board and Track has consultants that have helped us through this process and through the strategic planning process and whatnot, and I'm going to reach out to them as well because I know they've been talking to Sarah as well. And I also want to thank Ellen. I want to think this whole process should be the beginning of our realization that we need to celebrate what Ellen has done for us in the last few years. I hope she's listening right now when I say this, and I hope that once we're through this, we can spend the rest of the school year getting ready to make sure we show her how we appreciate everything she has done. That goes to Ellen and Anders as well, because they have brought the school to where we are today. We needed them. And as much as this feels difficult because it's a transition, it's an opportunity for us to thank them for that. And I want to thank Ellen for all her support throughout the process, for her support in the last couple of years, and for being a confidant to the board. And hopefully we can continue to show how we can build a relationship with the next executive director. So thank you, Ellen. Thank you, everybody in the search committee. Thank you, John. And thanks to our advisory council. They actually reach out to our advisory council. For those who are not familiar, previous board members have been providing input, I shouldn't say input, I should say advice about how to do this. So thank everybody that has helped with that.
I also just want to chime in and thank Sarah and Mike. They've been instrumental in working extra, and these are folks that did never complain. And when we decide to hold a meeting, I think we forget, oh, okay, they'll be there too. And I know we appreciate it, but I always just take that moment. And Erica as well for her technical expertise. She ran over here today. We needed her, but she's got a sick kid at home. So, it's really nice to take a moment and just be so thankful for the dedication everyone shows every day. So those are, I think, my observations of the past 2 days. It was just, this is an amazing school. It's just great to spend time here. So
and it's going to continue to be an amazing school, regardless of what happens in the next couple of weeks.
So I want to second everything that you said, Raul, and Dawn said, and also want to add, in celebration of Ellen, it's her birthday today.
That's
so
right.
happy
What?
birthday.
Shall we sing? Shall we sing?
I should have known that. And happy birthday, Ellen. Hope you're enjoying it and sing happy birthday and having some cake for us.
Yes.
All right, anything else? Any other questions? We have a plan. Enjoy your break. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
We need a roll call.
Yes, so Maura moved and
Dawn?
Dawn seconds.
More on Dawn.
Maura and
First and
Dawn.
second.
Sorry, take my eyes.
No, you're fine. We're team.
I'll let you roll the call since you have it in front of you.
Okay.
Unless you want me to, right?
Yep, I'll do it. Let's see. Okay. Dawn Capella.
Yes.
Jill Schaefer.
Yes.
Laura Burgess.
Yes.
Maura Webster.
Yes.
Raul Forrest.
Yes.
Roger Jarrett.
Yes.
Sheila Kelly.
Yes.
Samini Sampat.
Yes.
Zachary Prescott.
Yes.
And that is
Motion passes. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good break.